Who built a road on the bottom of the ocean? That question was asked out loud for the first time in 1968 by a marine archaeologist named Dr. J. Manson Valentine, standing on the deck of a research vessel off the coast of North Bimini in the Bahamas, looking at photographs that had just come up from a camera lowered 40 feet below the surface. The photographs showed something that stopped the conversation on that deck completely. A line. A long, impossibly straight line of flat stone blocks running along the seafloor in a formation that looked exactly like a road. Fitted stones, consistent dimensions, right angles at the edges, a construction pattern. Nobody on that deck could answer the question Valentine asked. Not that day, not in the decades that followed. And the reason they could not answer it is not what you might expect. Before we go any further, tell me where in the world you are watching this from. Drop it in the comments. I want to know who is following this story. The Bahamas in 1968 were a different world. The ocean floor around those islands had never been systematically surveyed. The diving equipment of the era was basic. The academic infrastructure for underwater archaeology barely existed. When Valentine and his colleague Jacques Mayol descended to the seafloor near North Bimini, they were doing something that almost nobody had done before in that specific location. What they found stretched for approximately half a mile along the seafloor in water between 15 and 20 feet deep. The stones were large. Some of them measured up to 15 feet across and 2 feet thick. They were roughly rectangular, clearly flat on their upper surfaces, and arranged in a double or sometimes triple row formation running in a consistent northeast to southwest direction. The joints between the stones were tight, not perfectly fitted the way dressed stone construction fits, but closer than random natural deposition produces. Valentine described the formation carefully in his initial report. He noted the consistency of the stone type, a form of micrite limestone called beachrock. He noted that the stones appeared to be resting on top of each other in some sections in a way that suggested intentional placement rather than natural fracturing. He noted the overall linear organization of the formation extending beyond what his initial dive covered. He called it the Bimini Road, and that name, with all its implications, was the beginning of the problem. Within 2 years of Valentine's discovery, a counter-explanation had been published in the academic literature. Geologists Eugene Shin and Robert Ginsberg conducted their own examination of the Bimini Formation and published a paper arguing that what Valentine had found was not a road. It was beachrock, natural beachrock formation, that fractures in roughly rectangular patterns along stress lines as it hardens. The Atlantic coast of the Bahamas produces beachrock formations regularly. The fracturing process can create formations that look, to an untrained eye, like arranged stone. The paper was thorough. The geological argument was scientifically legitimate. Beachrock does fracture in regular patterns. The formation at Bimini is made of beachrock. These facts are not in dispute. But here is where the story gets complicated. Because the geologists addressed some of the anomalies in the formation and quietly left others alone. The beachrock fracturing argument explains rectangular shapes. It does not comfortably explain the double and triple row arrangement. Natural beachrock fractures in place. It does not organize itself into parallel rows. It does not produce stones resting on top of other stones in a deliberate-looking stacking pattern. And it does not explain what subsequent investigators found at the northeastern end of the formation in the 1990s. A 90-degree turn. The Bimini Road does not just run straight. At its northeastern end, the formation turns sharply, at almost exactly a right angle. Natural fracturing processes do not turn corners. Water current does not arrange broken stone into an L-shaped formation. A road, by definition, turns when it needs to go somewhere different. And nobody who has published in a mainstream academic journal has adequately explained that corner. Here is the part of this story that most people who have heard of the Bimini Road do not know. The formation sits in Bahamian territorial waters. The Bahamas has jurisdiction over archaeological investigation in those waters. And the Bahamian government's position on the Bimini Road, maintained consistently since the 1970s, is that the formation is a natural geological feature and therefore not subject to archaeological investigation protocols. That classification matters enormously. A natural geological feature requires no excavation permits, no archaeological survey requirements, no investigation framework. Researchers who want to conduct systematic scientific investigation of the formation, including ground-penetrating sonar surveys of what lies beneath the visible stone layer, have found the permitting process for such investigation either unavailable or unresponsive for decades. This is not a dramatic government conspiracy. It is something quieter and in some ways more frustrating. It is bureaucratic classification producing practical invisibility. If the thing is officially a rock formation, then there is no mechanism to fund or permit the investigation that would determine whether it is actually a rock formation. The classification prevents the investigation that would confirm or challenge the classification. A research team from the Association for Research and Enlightenment conducted investigations in the 1980s and produced sonar data, suggesting that beneath the visible stone, there are additional structural elements not consistent with natural beachrock formation. That data was published in their own institutional literature and was not taken up by mainstream academic journals. The permits for follow-up investigation were not granted. In 2006, a team of researchers using side-scan sonar mapped a much larger area of the seafloor around Bimini and found that the visible road formation is part of a significantly larger pattern of linear and geometric features on the seafloor, extending well beyond what Valentine originally documented. That survey has not been followed up with direct investigation. The permits required for direct physical investigation of the broader area have not been obtained. The ocean floor in that area remains officially uninvestigated. Here is what everyone agrees on. The stones at Bimini are on the seafloor. They are underwater. They have been underwater for a very long time. The question of how long takes us somewhere important. Sea level in the Atlantic Basin at the end of the last ice age was significantly lower than it is today. The Bahama Banks, the vast shallow platform on which the Bahamian islands sit, were largely above sea level approximately 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. The areas currently under 15 to 20 feet of water near Bimini were dry land or very shallow coastal areas during that period. If the formation is beach rock that formed naturally, it formed in a coastal environment and was subsequently submerged as sea levels rose. Beach rock forms in the intertidal zone. For the Bimini formation to be beach rock, it had to have formed when that area was a coastline, which means it formed at minimum several thousand years ago, and potentially 10,000 or more years ago. If the formation is a constructed road, it was constructed when that area was above water, which means the same thing. It was built at minimum several thousand years ago and potentially 10,000 or more years ago. Either way, the formation is ancient beyond the accepted timeline of complex civilization in the Americas. Either way, the question of what was happening on the Bahama Banks when that area was dry land matters enormously for understanding human prehistory in the Atlantic region, and that question is officially not being investigated. The 2006 sonar survey found something else that has received almost no attention outside specialist circles. Beyond the visible Bimini Road formation, at various points across the Bahama Banks seafloor, the sonar data showed additional linear features, not isolated, not random. Features running in consistent orientations that the survey team described as potentially representing an organized landscape. A pattern of features across a seafloor area covering hundreds of square kilometers. One researcher involved in the survey used the word infrastructure in a private communication, later made public. Not construction. Infrastructure. The difference is significant. A single road could be a coincidence. Infrastructure implies a network. A network implies a civilization organized enough to build one. The paper describing these findings was circulated among researchers. It was not published in a peer-reviewed journal. The data exists. The analysis exists. The follow-up investigation that would answer the questions the data raises does not exist. Because the permits for that investigation have not been obtained. Because the official classification of the original formation as a natural feature creates no pathway for investigating the broader pattern that the sonar data suggests. Who built a road on the bottom of the ocean? The honest answer, 56 years after Valentine asked it on that research deck, is that we still do not know. Not because the question is unanswerable, because the investigation required to answer it has not been allowed to happen. The data that would resolve the question is sitting in research files and sonar archives and institutional collections, waiting for someone with the authority to say, "Go and look." Actually look. Take the equipment down there and find out. The road is still there, under 40 feet of Atlantic water, running northeast to southwest for half a mile, turning a corner at its northeastern end that no geological process adequately explains. Connected, if the sonar data is right, to a pattern of features across the seafloor that nobody has been permitted to directly investigate. It is not hidden. It is not classified. It is not locked in a government vault somewhere. It is just lying there on the ocean floor in water shallow enough to dive without specialized equipment, in a jurisdiction that has decided it is a rock formation and therefore requires no further attention. The most revealing thing about the Bimini Road is not what it is. It is how little effort has been made to find out. That is what should sit with you. What do you think is down there? Leave it below. And if this is the kind of story you want more of, you know what to do.